Time to get frank. Yeah, let's get frank.
Let's Get Frank, a radio podcast from your friends at St. Francis de Sales. We're all about real talk, real life, real faith. With God, we'll dive into what it means to live with purpose, navigate tough questions, and get to know Jesus like never before. Hi, everybody. I'm Shannon. I'm here with Angel.
Hello, good morning.
And this is Get Frank. And I don't want to take too much time, but we have a special guest today. His name is Matt. He is our director of liturgy and music, and he is going to talk to us today about a few things. But I don't want to waste any more time. I want to go right into the reading, and let's do it.
Right. Don't steal Matt's thunder.
Yeah, we only have a small amount of time, and this guy is known for talking. So let's get to it. So our reading today comes from Luke, and here we go. Tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to listen to Jesus. But the Pharisees and scribes began to complain, saying, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." So to them Jesus addressed this parable. A man has 2 sons, and the younger son said to his father, "Father, give me the share of your estate that should come to me." So the father divided the property between them. After a few days, the younger son collected all his belongings and set off to a distant country, where he squandered his inheritance on a life of dissipation. When he had freely spent everything, a severe famine struck that country, and he found himself in dire need. So he hired himself out to one of the local citizens, who sent him to his farm to tend the swine. And he longed to eat his fill of the pods on which the swine fed, but nobody gave him any. Coming to his senses, he thought, "How many of my father's hired workers have more than enough food to eat? But here I am, dying from hunger. I shall get up and go to my father, and I shall say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son. Treat me as you would treat me, one of your hired workers.' So he got up and went back to his father. While he was still a long way off, his father caught sight of him and was filled with compassion. He ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. His son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son.' But his father ordered his servants, 'Quickly, bring the finest robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Take the fatted calf and slaughter it. Then let us celebrate with a feast, because this son of mine was dead, and he has come to life again. He was lost, and he has been found.' Then the celebration began. Now the older son had been out in the field, and on his way back, as he neared the house, he heard the sound of music and dancing. He called one of the servants and asked what this might mean. The servant said to him, 'Your brother has returned, and your father has slaughtered the fatted calf, because he has him back safe and sound.' He became angry, and when he refused to enter the house, his father came out and pleaded with him. He said to his father in reply, 'Look, all these years I served you, and not once did I disobey your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat to feast on with my friends. But when your son returns, who swallowed up your property with prostitutes, for him you slaughter the fatted calf.' He said to him, 'My son, you are here with me. Everything I have is yours. But now we must celebrate and rejoice, because your brother was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and he has been found.'"
That's got to be one of my all-time favorite gospel stories?
It's seared in my memory. That story, it's probably in the top 5 of, readings I've heard since I'm a cradle Catholic, and never stopped attending Mass, and, have been exposed to many Bible studies and philosophy and theology, etc. But that right there, the prodigal son, is from so many different angles, from the angle of the father, from the angle of the prodigal son, from the angle of the brother who, seemed to always do the right thing and, was the faithful son. From every angle I've seen it in my life. I've been the father, I've been the prodigal son, I've been the jealous son. What I see most in this story, though, overall, is God's recipe for reconciliation and mercy, and how God's mercy works, how God's forgiveness works. One thing that pops out at me when I read this reading now, at this point in my life, I'm 42, and I was a entertainer songwriter for about 17 years, and now I've worked for a church for about 7. And there's a whole story to all of that, and it continues to unfold. My conversion has not been an instant one; it's a continuing one, and it still continues today, and I hope it will with God's grace. And as I see this reading today, what pops out at me most is that the son came to his senses, and that's the first part of the recipe, coming to our senses. So just think about that in your life. What is not sensical? What is not making sense to yourself about yourself? Is there something that you can think of right now that bothers your conscience? Whatever that is for you, think about it and ask yourself, what would it look like if I came to my senses? What would I do? Well, in this case, the son had only one thing left to do. He was completely out of options. So he decided to go back to his father. As I have been completely out of options in my life many times, I can relate to that. And when I mean out of options, I mean out of options for love from God. Sometimes we've run so far afoul of God's love that we're like, how can God even love us? After this and this and this other thing and this behavior I do, and hopefully, if you're listening to this program, there's something in your life, even if you've been like the other brother and you've, done the right thing and paid your taxes and paid your tithes and, in your own imagination have been such a great person. There's got to be something in your life where you have wasted. That's what prodigal comes from in Latin. It means to waste, and also means to go away from the good. What have we wasted? Our time, our energy, our talent. So the first part of that recipe, again, is coming to our senses about whatever it is that our conscience, that the Holy Spirit is showing us that we need to come to our senses about. What does that look like? And again, for the prodigal son, was going to his father. And you notice that the father starts to run out to meet him, because the father knows when he sees his son coming that his son would not come unless he had a repentant heart. So that's like us showing up. We come to our senses and we say, we got to do something different. And then we do it. That's showing up. And then what does God do when we show up? He meets us. All right. And then what do we need to do? This is the next part of the recipe. We need to say, I'm sorry. And we need to claim what we're sorry for. Father, I have sinned against heaven and I have sinned against you. This is how I sinned. Now we don't get a big detail in this story, but I'm sure, in this type of situation, the son would have said, I squandered the inheritance that I begged from you before you died, which is pretty rude, to ask a father for their inheritance prior to their death. And I can even relate to that because I'm one of 9 kids, and 5 siblings in front of me got their college half paid for. And I got kicked out of the house because I refused to go to that particular college. Now, I felt I felt dignified in that choice. However, I was kind of resentful that my father didn't help me at all. And in fact, in 2008, when I was 27, he came to me and said, I have a little bit of money set aside if you want me to help you a little bit if you go back to school. So I went to music school. And then the stock market crashed. And he went for one of the few times he was crying. He told me to come over and he cried. Up to that point in his life, I rarely saw him cry. He cried a lot more when he was getting older, just reflecting on things. But he was about 65 at the time. And he said, I'm so sorry, but the stock market collapsed. And my financial advisor advised me to buy Bank of America, and the stock tanked from $30 to $4. I'm sorry, I can't help you. And later on, about 7 or 8 years later, I said, Dad, now that everything's gotten better, can you make this student loan payment? Well, I felt like a jerk for doing that, quite honestly. But I was kind of broke at the time. And, I didn't want to go more into debt. And my dad was kind. And I just asked him nicely, Dad, can you take over the payments? And then when my mom passed away, there was still $4,000. But then my mom and dad left us a little bit of money and I could pay off the whole loan. But back to the story, the recipe for forgiveness in the prodigal son, I talked about first, he came to his senses. Second, he went and did something about coming to his senses. He went to his father. His father met him halfway. So he showed up. The father meets him. Then he tells the father, I'm sorry. I've sinned against heaven and sinned against you. Then the father immediately, and this is how God works, I believe, immediately embraces him, puts a robe on him, puts a ring on his finger, which is a sign of dignity, and he restores him. And he didn't ask him a litany of questions. And this is where I reflect upon the fact that God's love and mercy is greater than ours. We really, truly, in our own humanity, are not capable of that kind of mercy and forgiveness. Okay, we want to say, okay, well, let me tell you how many ways you've hurt me and how long this has been giving me trouble, that you've been out there squandering the inheritance that you begged for, and I've heard that you were doing this and that, the other thing with prostitutes, and now you're working, feeding pigs, and you don't even have enough to eat the food that the pigs eat. And it's funny they use the word, waste. Prodigal means to waste. He's literally in the pig's waste by the end of his process of running away from the love that's there and present in his life. And the last step of the forgiveness is God gives us more than we expect. He comes back to his father. His father meets him. He says he's sorry. He means it. His father knows he means it. He says, here's your robe and your ring. Come with me. And he slaughters the fattened calf and he throws a feast. Well, how else does God convert hearts besides show us what mercy and forgiveness is like? And then the brother hears this party and he's not in touch or doesn't understand that vastness of mercy, that vastness of grace that the father is bestowing on his brother who has squandered the inheritance, which as another brother, you would think, what the heck is this guy thinking? He's taking the money from my dad and going off and wasting it all. Of course, anyone would be a little bit like, what the heck? But he doesn't understand what God's doing. And so when he confronts the father says to him, my son, you already have everything I have to offer. You're already living in my kingdom, in my my zone of protection. You have been living every day in this place where you're protected and you're cared for and you have work and you have a livelihood and you will have an inheritance. So why are you so worked up? Well, that brother obviously went off and probably had to do some thinking. So who are you in this story? I think that's something when we read the Bible, put yourself into the situation. When have I been the prodigal son? When have I been the father of the prodigal, or the friend of a prodigal, or some way associated with someone who squandered something important to you, whether it was a wife or a husband or a family member, whatever. Think about it. When have you given something to someone and they've squandered it? How did you treat them? Can you be godlike in your mercy and in your forgiveness? And can you apply this story to your life? Whichever person you are, the father, the prodigal son, or the brother who's jealous of this forgiveness and mercy. And I know I went on kind of long there, but that's my thoughts on the story.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your insights, and that recipe. It just simplifies it so beautifully. So thank you for that. So one of the thoughts that I have about this reading is, and you kind of touched on it with the definition of, or the different definitions of prodigal. So you said what, lavish?
Well, there's lavish, but there's wasting.
Yeah.
And
So
there's going away from.
So when I think about that, and I think about this reading in particular, I wonder who is the title in the Bible is the prodigal son, and that's how we refer to this parable. But who is the prodigal son? Is the prodigal son the one that asked for the inheritance, the younger one? That one makes sense, right? He's the one that's scooping up all the stuff and going and wasting it. But then there's the older son who does everything right. And in what way is he prodigal? He is wasting the love that is already his, the kingdom that is already his and there for him, and he's completely disregarding it, right? He's
unaware of his
blessings. He has no idea. He's in the ingratitude of the younger son. And then also, here's one that really gets me thinking is the prodigal son. Maybe it's the father himself who is just loving, just unconditionally loving and pouring out his love and his mercy onto these two kids who don't even recognize the gift that he is giving. And he is wasting, quote unquote, wasting that love.
Wasting the fatted calf, wasting the ring, wasting the robe.
Yes, but doing so in a way that is just out of pure, unconditional love that we all desire in the depths of our hearts. And I love every bit of that story, because you can put yourself in so many different places, different perspectives and characters. Another character or perspective is even like the townspeople. What they would have done is, line the streets as the prodigal son is coming home, and they would have wanted to protect the king, or and maybe stoned the kid as he came back. Groveling, and he was fully expecting that, really. Yeah. But the father himself comes running out and puts himself between his son and the townspeople to protect him. And that too, just really
that's something I heard later in life, and I really do love that image. I didn't know it as a young person.
Yeah.
It's when you study history and you combine it with scripture, it's really powerful. Like you're
right. There's nuances in this reading that you don't pick up on just from the reading. You have to dig deeper and know that the historical context and the cultural context about people in that society and what they would have done in a scenario like that. So, encourage all of our listeners to kind of dig deeper into that if that is of interest to you, because there's a lot more to this story than what it seems to be on the surface level.
Well, this has been a very interesting talk, and as I've been listening to you both talking, I pulled up this little prayer called the Litany of Trust. And I'd like us to just read half of it, not all of it, but it's going to reach. It reached me, and I am a prodigal. I am a prodigal daughter, and I've been a prodigal daughter a couple different times throughout my life. I'm not a one and done girl. And when I read this, this prayer, and when I think about the depth and the heart and what I'm really trying to say to the Lord, this gives me peace, and so I'm going to say it, and then there's a response to it. If Matt and Angel, if you wouldn't mind doing the response is called "Deliver Me, Jesus." Okay, so again, this is a litany of trust. From the belief that I have to earn your love.
Deliver
Deliver
me,
me,
Jesus.
From the fear that I am unlovable.
Deliver me, Jesus.
From the false security that I have what it takes.
Deliver me, Jesus.
From the fear that trusting you will leave me more destitute.
Deliver me, Jesus.
All suspicion of your words and promises.
Deliver me, Jesus.
From the rebellion against childlike dependency on you.
Deliver me, Jesus.
From refusals and reluctances in accepting your will.
Deliver me, Jesus.
From anxiety about my future.
Deliver me, Jesus.
From resentment or excessive preoccupation with the past.
Deliver me, Jesus.
From the restless self-seeking in the present moment.
Deliver me, Jesus.
From disbelief in your love and your presence.
Deliver me, Jesus.
From the fear of being asked to give more than I have.
Deliver me, Jesus.
From the belief that my life has no meaning or worth.
Deliver me, Jesus.
From the fear of what love demands.
Deliver me, Jesus.
From discouragement.
Deliver me, Jesus.
Now there's a whole nother section of this, but I want you to know that those words that we just spoke, it is a powerful thing for you to ask the Lord to deliver you. And He only wants to shower His mercy on you. So if you're pain in your heart and you're afraid to come home, it's time to come home. The arms are open wide, and love is waiting for you. And maybe in a way that you've never thought it could be possible.
And that's happened to me many times.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing, but again, back to the litany of trust, that, there's some literature I've read that says, after you surrender your will to God, you will no longer look at your past with a big bag of guilt. I'm paraphrasing. Or nor look to the future with fear. That you'll be able to stand in the present moment and be grateful with full knowledge, as full as you can be, of how God has delivered you already. And if you're in a place where you feel angry or like God has not heard your prayers, or like everyone's attacking you, I've talked to people recently, and I've heard a few people express that kind of sentiment, and I worry for them, and I ask God, please somehow meet them and help them surrender that, because what a prison to live in. And we're the only ones who can get out. We have the key to that prison, and the key is to turn it over to God. And what you're saying and what's happening in this story is, Shannon, you were referencing, just come back. Come back. Well, what does it mean to come back? Start right now. God, I don't know how to come back. Give me the desire to come back, at least. Just, Lord, give me the desire to seek where you are. Maybe St. Francis de Sales. Maybe your mother, who's a person of faith, or a brother, or someone in your life who you respect that has faith. Go to them. Find the Lord.
Well, there's all kinds of songs. Sorry, people, I can't help it. I've got a singer in me, and I've got a singer right in the room. And, I'm not afraid about putting people on the spot. So I'd like us to sing the first verse of Amazing Grace together, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Amazing grace, How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. It's there for the taking. Come back to the Lord.
If you're struggling to find it, you need to struggle no more. Angel, I'm going to get back to you. If you could tell them some of the things that are coming up here. We've got a whole bunch of things coming up as we get towards Easter and some of the things that we've got next.
Yeah, we have some really great things. We still have fish fries going on every Friday night from 4 to 7. We'd love to see you there. Another thing that we have on Friday nights that might be of interest to you is a program called Catholic in Recovery. It's our version of AA. It's scripture-based recovery program for those who are battling addictions and wanting to see a change in their lives. So we invite you to that. That's also on Friday evenings, every Friday night at 7 p.m. right here at the church. Weekend services are awesome, and we'd love to have you there. Saturday night, 4:45, more contemporary mass. You can actually probably talk about the different masses that we have and the different music that's played at each.
Yeah, 4:45 on Saturdays. We do mostly praise and worship music that you might hear on the radio, and also ancient songs and hymns. In addition to that, especially during Lent, you'll hear some chanting. So it's a variety of music. And then at the 8:30 Mass on Sunday morning is organ with a choir. And I'm really proud of my choir. We've got about 15 members. If you want to perhaps come back to church and sing first, if you're more comfortable coming somewhere to sing rather than just popping in the church, it's a good way to get reacquainted with going to church. It's a great group of people. I've been here 7 years at St. Francis de Sales, and I'm really grateful for the culture that we have in our choir. At the 11 o'clock Mass, we do a live stream. You can see that on YouTube, St. Francis de Sales, Newark, Ohio. And we have mostly praise and worship music. And again, some of the ancient chants that we do during Masses. And if you've never been to a Catholic Mass, it's really profound. Every moment has meaning, and it's quite something to encounter, both spiritually and intellectually, but also physically. The kneeling and the standing, and eventually, if you become Catholic, if you're not Catholic, receiving the sacraments, or if you are Catholic, receiving the sacraments again, like reconciliation and the Holy Eucharist, Jesus himself. So that's about all I've got to say. And I'm just really proud of you guys for this radio show you're doing. And thank you so much for having me here. I feel like you guys are putting the ring and the robe on me. I've been on the radio before, and I've been on Catholic radio, but not in the sense that you're asking me my thoughts and feelings about who God is and who I am. So thank you for giving me that opportunity.
Well, and thank you, Matt. I mean, that's what this show is all about. It's about the real people, who are living out their faith day to day. We're not talking about perfect people, right, Shannon?
No.
Well, I don't know why you looked at me when you said I wasn't perfect, but I am not that. But no, you're exactly right. We have only in our hearts to tell truth, our truth, how God's grace has made us have better lives in every single way. So it's just, like Matt said, it's time for you to realize, what's going on and come home. It's just come home, and you are welcome here. We will welcome you with radical hospitality that we're known for. Can't wait to see you.
Yep. We'll see you next week.
Oh, get Frank. Yeah, get Frank.